Welcome to Relationship Talk, the podcast where we have real conversations about love, well-being, dating, and relationships. In today's episode, I had a deeply moving conversation with Saski Smith, who is following a personal passion with the aim to help people in raising awareness of suicide prevention. Her mantra has always been, it's safer to share. She's seen, felt, and lived with the true devastation of someone not feeling like their voice is worthy of being heard. She has a natural love for the success of people, and she finally feels ready to share her story in the aim it helps. During this conversation, Saski shares her incredibly compelling story of navigating life after her father died by suicide when she was just 12 years old, including how she reached a place of acceptance in her grief and how recognizing generational trauma has empowered her to begin to break the chain. Saski also speaks on why the language we use around suicide matters and how shifting from terms like committed suicide, it's not a crime, to more compassionate language can help reduce stigma, shame, and judgment. She also provides insights into how trauma can shape your relationship with yourself and others, including romantic connections, and how you can begin to rebuild emotional safety. She also talks about how her guiding motto, it's safer to share, is encouraging others to speak more openly and vulnerably, creating a space for meaningful support around mental health and well-being, and so much more. You are about to get the whole RLT, aka Real Relationship Talk, so you're going to want to watch the entire episode. I hope that you will find this conversation as encouraging as I did. And remember to subscribe, hit that like button and that notification bell. I'm Teresha Young, your international wellness and relationship coach. Enjoy, take notes, and get ready to apply all key messages you take away today. Hello, Saski. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Hello, I'm so good. Thank you. So excited to have a conversation with you today.
I'm so looking forward to this conversation, Saski, because I know we are going to be talking about something that is very moving for many people who will be tuning in. And it's a topic that is very close to my heart too, because we are going to be talking about raising the awareness of suicide prevention. And for those who have followed my story, you know that I have shared very vulnerably and very openly that about 15 years ago, I attempted to take my own life.
Mhm.
And I am here to tell the tale. So
Mhm.
for me, it's something that is very close to my heart. And I know for listeners out there, it will be very close to their heart too. So Saski, I would love for you to share with us what has compelled you to spread awareness about suicide prevention and just a bit more about your story.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the word compel just rings alarm bells with me because that's exactly how I feel.
Mm.
So for me to look to share my story, so I am 36. I grew up in Leeds with my mum and my two older sisters. So I'm the baby of the sisters. And, childhood was really challenging for me in that my dad was a very ambivalent character. He was typically in and out of our lives quite a lot. He had a very challenging childhood himself, and there were a lot of difficulties around that. And there was a theme of abuse in every way you can look to imagine. So you could see through, my early years that he would struggle with that. And I would say from the ages of 5 and 12, it became more apparent that those challenges for him came to the forefront and were difficult for him to look to push down anymore. So unfortunately, it resulted in him looking to mirror some of those behaviours in the form of some abuse. So it was really difficult because all of a sudden we did have to stop seeing him. So there was a whole complexity around, all of a sudden, Dad, he's kind of there, he's kind of not, and then when he is, it's really difficult to have that interaction with him, the communication. And following us stopping seeing him, there was around a 2-year time frame where, you know, his life became more and more challenging, and I believe that it it took its toll on him, and unfortunately resulted in him taking his own life when he was 38. So, you know, hugely devastating for everybody. Um, and I think ever since then, and I look to the only way I can look to describe that moment from then onwards is it's as if somebody had pressed pause on my life, and that it's been a struggle ever since to press play. So I've always been a huge empath, and I think, you know, experiencing something like that only increases that, because you look for questions. You know, anyone who's experienced suicide and the tragedy of that and the loss of that, you're so desperate to understand why. You're so desperate to find answers, and thinking, you know, what could we have done? Could we have done something more? So you have this driving you through your whole life to look to seek for those things. And I suppose the reason that I'm looking to share my story now is because for so many years I wasn't able to talk about it. I couldn't say the word dad. I couldn't talk about suicide. I couldn't talk
Mm.
about loss. And I really, really struggled with that. It's been a really lonely place at times. So I do feel compelled, in order to look to say, actually, it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to feel your feelings in these moments. And I've always had a mantra in life, which is it's safer to share. And I remember saying that even from such a young age, and I assume that's connected to my dad's death. In I so hate that he didn't feel like he couldn't share his stories, his issues, his challenges, his issues of his mental health. So I hate to think that anybody is in a position where they feel isolated and that they feel
Mm.
lonely, and that they don't feel worthy enough to be able to share how they feel, and they see the only alternative being to quite physically step away from this world. So I would say, in a bit of a nutshell, I think, you know, the trauma that I experienced from a really young age has absolutely led me to this path today, in wanting to look to share, and share the message of it is safer to share, because I truly
Mm.
believe so.
Yeah, that's a really, really powerful motto, because not feeling safe can actually make us feel so isolated. As you said, it was a very lonely experience for you. So you have mentioned, reflecting and saying that, could I have done something different? Maybe
Yeah.
I missed the signs.
Mhm.
What else was showing up? Because you experienced something incredibly traumatic at such a young age, such a tender age that you experienced it. So when you were thinking about those situations, what kind of thoughts did you actually think about anything you could have done differently?
Yeah, I think so. I was 12 when my dad passed.
Yeah,
And I think, you know, obviously at that age, that there probably wasn't anything
yeah.
that we could have done. I know that my mum especially struggled over the years, in trying to get him help. So, you know, trying to get him help. So she obviously did try and explore those avenues. But this is over 20 years ago,
Mm,
where typically we weren't in a position where we were openly talking about it. There weren't as many resources on hand. There weren't all the men's health charities. So I don't really think, reflecting, like you say, and
mm,
understanding the position that I'm in now and the age that I'm at now, I don't think so. I think probably from the ages of, you know, late teens to the whole of my 20s, I certainly asked that question.
yeah.
And, you know, from such an early age, my dad was so in and out. One of my sisters and I would be like, you know, when we get to 16, we'll go help him, and we'll go and see what we can do. We'll go help him where he lives, with a job. So we always had it in us to want to help. And I think we knew that there was something where he, for such a long time, and it didn't really go, probably up until, you know, recent years, that I can confidently say, you know, I probably couldn't have helped him in that situation. But I think, what's really important now is the times have changed and there is so much help available. There is so much resource out there. So, which I'm so pleased to see. And it's really sad for my story, but I'm so pleased to see how that's evolved.
Yeah, yeah. Something you mentioned there, because for people who are in this space at the moment and they could be experiencing quite a lot of sadness, loneliness, trauma, you have mentioned that you have a sister
Yeah.
and but you still felt lonely as
Yes.
well. Can you describe a little bit more about that situation? Because I'm sure there's be people out there who still have somebody with them,
Mhm.
technically, physically, but can still feel lonely. What does that feel like for you?
Absolutely, and it's a really interesting point because I've two older sisters, and there's
Mm.
roughly 18 months between each of us, so we're really really close, and we experience essentially that experience together.
Yeah.
However, the communication wasn't great between us, and because it was so taboo to talk about,
Mm.
at that time, and as a family, we didn't know how to talk about it. And again, there wasn't so many services for families to come together to look to openly speak about it, say the really uncomfortable things, the really uncomfortable words that we were feeling. So
Mm.
I think what naturally happened, we all kind of went on our own path to look to manage this ourselves. I do believe that we could have done that, but we were probably just too scared. I think we were
Mm.
driven a lot by fear
Mm.
and shame as well. I think, it's unfortunately suicide has a real shame attached to it in saying the words. And I think over the years, what I'd really struggled with was, and to today, I've never met anybody who has experienced a loss of a parent through suicide.
Mm.
So it's always felt like I've been alone in managing what the complexities of that is.
Mm.
Um, but like I say, now there are support groups where you can look to come together and share those stories and just feel aligned. And
Mm.
everybody's experience is slightly different. The emotions that you go through are always slightly different. But I kind of reference it where when there is an alignment of something, whatever that topic may be, you do feel a sense of comfort from that, and you feel slightly accepted, and it's a really lovely feeling to feel, actually I felt a certain way for so long and I haven't had anyone to speak to, but then when you come together with somebody who's had a similar experience, you automatically feel like you can naturally offload and
Mm.
you feel like there will be some connection and understanding, and that's really important.
Yes, it is. And that word acceptance is so big because you were experiencing grief. And for many people who are familiar with the grief cycle, acceptance is one of the last stages of the grief cycle. So, for those who aren't familiar with it, you've got that whole denial, that shock. I cannot
Yeah.
believe what is happening right now. And then you can go into this sense of you got denial, anger, maybe. I'm just angry at
Yeah.
the person who maybe took their life. I'm angry at God, the
Yeah.
universe. I'm angry at people.
Yeah.
I'm angry because other people have their parents and I don't have my
Yeah.
parents. All
Hmm.
of that emotion that can come up for you. Then you can have the bargaining stage, which is, what could I have done differently? Did I miss the
Yeah.
signs? Then generally there's depression, not always clinical depression that
Yeah.
people move into, and then acceptance. And you've used the word acceptance in terms of connecting with people and feeling accepted.
Yeah.
At what stage do you feel, because you were so
Mm.
young, Stephanie, at what stage did you feel that you had like really accepted that this was life?
Yeah. Honestly, really recently, I would
Yeah.
say, probably only last year. I've experienced and been through therapy most of my 20s, and last year I'd looked to take it up again because I knew that there were reoccurring themes, there were reoccurring beliefs and behaviours that I was displaying which were detrimental to me. So I did some more therapy, and I had hadn't done this before with a therapist, but she spoke a lot about generational trauma, and we started with looking back, at my mum and dad's and their mum and dad's and parents beyond that. And I kind of thought, why are we doing this? This is about me. I need you to have the time on me. And I was like, we're going back too far. But in that exercise and that process, it really allowed me to accept, because the really painful irony for my dad's life was his mother took her own life at the age of 38. So there is a real awful irony in that, he experienced it and then he did the same. So it was a bit of a light bulb moment in me thinking, gosh, I understand. I totally understand. And I knew that information, but I think it was seeing it written down, it was seeing it visually, and really understanding how his generational trauma had impacted him and now how that's impacting me. And there was some sense of acceptance in. It felt like a weight off my shoulders as to I couldn't have done anything. I couldn't. And I'm so sad for him and I'm so sad for his mother. But it did take a weight off me, because it felt like I'd been carrying this burden for so long in order to try and understand it. And it was only seeing it written down as to, how devastating the last 60 years in this family had been from that side, for me to think, gosh, that's happened. And rather than me being fearful of it happening, let's try spin that and flip that and look to break the chain. I think that's always been a pressure, and people who have experienced things with any form of disease will look to think, gosh, is it going to carry down to another generation? And suicide in particular, you can look to control that in some way. So I want this generation to be the one that breaks the chain. And I think we have a huge responsibility in educating people on how to do so and about the resources that are available. So yeah, I think it's really recent, and it scares me to say it out loud, because I was 12 when this happened and I'm now 36. So to think, gosh, it's been such a long slog of trying to get to that. And again, that is a driver for me, because I think it's such a long time. And I shouldn't have suffered for that long. I should have looked to have been able to be comfortable in talking about it and seeing and being provided with the right resources, and I wasn't. So I think that is another reason as to why I'm feeling compelled in looking to share this story.
Yeah. And I thank you so much for being so vulnerable and open in sharing your story. And, you know, it's never too late to start something great. That's one
Yeah,
of my mottos too.
good.
So
Yeah,
whilst it happened at the age of 12 and you're 36 now, also when you think about the irony of it too, is that you are potentially 2 years, I
yeah,
suppose, from
yeah,
your dad's 38, you said he
yeah.
was. His mum
Mhm.
was 38 too. So
Yeah,
you have broken the chain. No, you
yeah.
are on a mission to have broken that pattern, even if
Mhm.
it is an age-related pattern. It is
Yes,
something that you have taken charge of and said, let's do something differently.
yeah,
And I know for you, language is so important because you've spoken about the word shame, for
yeah.
example. So
Hmm.
language is so important in the way that we talk about suicide. I know that you're very, very, strongly an advocate of that.
Hmm.
Could you share what impact you feel the words we choose can have on people who are experiencing grief or loss or struggling at this time?
Yeah, absolutely. I think around suicide, it's only been a really short time where the phrase committed suicide hasn't been around. But it's still a phrase that I hear so
Yeah,
frequently, and people don't recognize the implications that can have on somebody, not only who has experienced grief by suicide, but somebody who is potentially in that mindset as well, who is low and who is depressed. It's still the word committed. Essentially that word was put to that phrase because it was seen as a crime. So there is immediate shame put to that, and it's so cold and it's so unaccepting and really difficult to hear. So I think that people we just need to stop doing it. We need to stop saying it. We need to be really responsible in the language that we're using. And, you know, guided by most charities, we are advised to say died by suicide, took their own life. Really, they're the phrases that we should look to be saying, because it really does cause a huge impact. And it's really casual as well. That's what I've taken from it, is that it's said in such a casual way. And I always think, you know, we wouldn't typically talk about other diseases or other illnesses in that way, where we would so casually say, you know, something about an illness. And I hate that for people, because I just think it's not fair. And, you know, as well, the term of, oh, I just want to kill myself, you know, in a really casual context, I must hear it every single week. And I don't think, you know, I don't think there is an intention behind to look to hurt somebody by that. That again has just become a real casual saying. Maybe when you're stressed, or you're having a moment in work or in life, you think, oh, I just want to kill myself, or I'm going to go do this. And you think, oh gosh, it's so, you know, the wave that I feel when somebody says that around me is just, it's an extreme body experience, and it's physical and it's horrible. So I hate to think that anyone else in my position is going through that. So I think we look to be responsible in how we're talking about suicide generally.
Absolutely. And it's that direction that is so important, because in order to people to feel safer to share,
Yeah,
they want to know that there isn't that shame or stigma
yeah,
associated around it. So the language that we use is so, so important. And I know that you've also spoken about the educational piece around that. So you've mentioned charities are encouraging alternative phrasing as well.
yeah.
What more can be done? I know that you're on your personal mission. Now, what more can we be doing in order to spread language that is more, I guess, connecting and more compassionate, I suppose?
Yeah. I think there's loads we can do. I think, again, like with my personal mission as such, you know, I'm hoping to look to step into education, look to host conversations, talks, or anything to really educate people from a young age, generally about mental health and the impacts that it can have, and the routes that we can look to take in order to have happy and positive mental health. But, you know, suicide is unfortunately so present in teenagers as well, which is so devastating.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to look to educate our people from a younger age in being responsible with the language, the
Mm.
charities are doing an amazing job. And I think, you know, social media is a blessing and a curse at times, isn't it? Where we have these huge, great, and powerful platforms that we can look to share more on in the education of language and the resources that are available. So I think they're the two main avenues that I would like to go down to explore and share,
Mm.
definitely.
So your motto, it's safer to share. And you said it's something that you perhaps created when you were young. It was
Yes.
something. What does safer to share look like then? If someone was to say to you, Saski, but what does that mean? No,
Yeah.
what does that mean
Yeah.
for me? Can you share more? Can you share what that looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. It has been something that I've said for such a long time. And I can recall conversations even with my friends where, you know, they've perhaps confided in me, and that you can see there's a shame attached to something that they may be doubtful to say, or they're worried about something with work or life. And I've just really simply said, you know, but it's safer to share. So allow it, get it off your chest, I think, is the real simple terms of that. In
Mm.
try not to feel really fearful in being you and being your authentic self.
Yeah.
You know, I caveat this with a really important message of, I don't, it's not easy. It isn't an easy task to do. And we have a huge responsibility on being on the receiving side of when someone looks to open up to you. And I think I would say, if in that first instance you perhaps haven't had the response that you wanted or
Mm.
that you expected, be persistent in your journey of that it's safer to share, because somebody will really want to help you, somebody will want to listen, and somebody will and can help you. So essentially it's me just trying to encourage people to look to be themselves, their most authentic self, and sharing the vulnerabilities, which again isn't easy. But once you do that, the lightness that you can feel is absolutely paramount in how you look and choose to move forward.
Mm. Yeah. And that's really great, is to create that space where people feel safe to be their most authentic self. And when we are going through these situations, sometimes we don't even know who we are, as a person and what our authentic self could look like. And I know that you have shared with us that therapy was something that helped you in order
Yeah,
to connect, I suppose, with more of your authentic self so that
yeah.
you are able to now be in a position where you can talk from your heart and you can talk with confidence. Was there anything else that you did in order to, I say, no, find your most authentic self? Because the things and the tools and techniques that you use in order to step into your own confidence is likely
Yeah.
to benefit people as well who are listening to this.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Firstly, like you say, therapy. I'm a huge advocate for therapy. I think it can be a really fearful step, but once you are in a environment where you feel safe and you know that it's a professional as well,
Yeah.
this you can rely on this person. They've been trained in order to how to communicate with you and allow you to feel safe and share your feelings. I think is one of the most powerful things you can do. And I have seen a bit of a evolve and adjust and shift in the mindset of that, especially with the younger generation. I have three nephews, two of which are in their teens, and they will quite openly talk about friends that are in therapy or the education that they get on that. So I think that's really great.
Mm.
So I think absolutely, if you have any fear or concerns about it, bite the bullet as best as you can. Look into it, do your research, match with the right person. And again, if in the situation you find a therapist and you don't feel completely comfortable, don't give up. Look to source other people that you build a connection with. I think that's really important when you're looking to go into therapy. Make sure that you're comfortable with the therapist and that you've got that right connection, and don't be scared in saying actually this isn't right for me and I'm going to look elsewhere to explore. And I think also personally for me is I started speaking openly more so to my friends and family. That's been huge for me. My friends in particular have always known about my dad, but perhaps not in such granular detail.
Mm.
And I suppose I was driven by a leadership program that I've been on with work, where a real theme and a message of that is it's okay to be you and to be your authentic self. So from that, I took an awful lot where I thought, actually, for so long I've tried to hide things, and it's pained me hiding those things. And I've got an incredible. I'm so blessed to have the best friendship group ever, who only ever want the best for me, and I recognise I'm very lucky with that. So I just started talking more, and luckily the response I received was so welcoming and so warm, in that it made me feel comfortable in being me and not having to hide these factors of shame and fear and sadness. So speaking to my sisters more openly, say,
Mm. So I love the fact that you have a great support network, people that can
yeah,
hold that space. And equally, it sounds like you are able to hold that space for them too, for them to feel safe to share.
yeah, I hope so.
Yeah. What else do you do for yourself? So you've got your support network, and I'm just really super curious as to when it comes to your mental health and well-being, what do you do for you that might not involve any other person?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, because naturally I will look to gain that peace of mind, the support from others around me. So my community is super important, but I also recognise, holding your own space and having that time alone is really important and as beneficial. And I think the way that I look to do that is I will comfortably be alone, and I will listen to a lot of podcasts. I think that is honestly my go-to in order to zen and to relax and to feel at peace. So that is when I know, I've got some time for myself. I will just kind of sit in that, listen, look to try and educate myself with things. I will go on walks and I will get a coffee and I will sit in a park and I will just sit and
Mm,
reflect. I will go get my nails done and I will
yeah.
go and just do something nice, something small, but know that I've scheduled myself an hour and a half where I'm going to have that time alone. I don't have to think about anybody else. I don't have the responsibility of anybody or anything in that moment. I will really try, and it's still a skill I'm trying to learn more so, is to be present
Mm.
and to sit and recognize what I'm really grateful for, show the gratitude, and just recognize where I am, and just say it out loud, write a gratitude journal. I've started to do so. I think really small things, but they are the they're leading me into making greater impacts and greater decisions and better choices going forward. So yeah, generally just some alone time and being comfortable with that I think is really powerful.
It is. And I am such an advocate of those techniques. That mindfulness and presence is so powerful and so grounding. Now, sometimes when we are feeling really ungrounded and life feels really rocky, feels really wobbly, the best thing that we can do is just to find ways to ground ourselves, and gratitude practices, being
Yeah,
present, time in nature can be such a
yeah,
grounding. And it's not something that we need to say, I need to dedicate a whole half an hour to. It could be 5 minutes just
yeah,
to have a little pocket of peace, so to
yes,
speak. No,
exactly.
just a little window, for us
Mhm,
to actually be able to ground ourselves.
mhm.
So I'm curious as well. This conversation and this podcast is all about relationships too. So how do you feel that this situation that you have experienced from such an early age shaped the relationship that you have with other people? Whether that's romantic relationships, whether that is friendships, how would you say that that has shaped and directed it, and some of your key learnings from that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, to be honest, the impact of losing my dad and the circumstances of that, how the biggest impacts that I've had have been the difficulties in relationships, specifically with men, in that I so for such a long time wanted to look to fix people because I didn't have the opportunity to save my dad and look to fix my dad. So I would generally look to go into relationships where there were perhaps some challenges, from a really early stage of the relationship, and I would stay for so long in order to try and rewrite my history in, there are challenges here, so I will look to try and fix this in order to have that validation that I suppose I've completed the task of what I couldn't do when I was younger. So relationships with men have been specifically difficult for me. I would say generally I have stayed in the relationships that are challenging and unhealthy for too long. And the relationships where they are healthy and unfamiliar to me because of the behaviors, I will run from.
Mm,
And that's caused huge implications for me and for others, and I recognize that and I take huge responsibility in that. So I've had to do an awful lot of work in order to try and right some wrongs and look to be compassionate to myself around that, because it's, I think anybody who experiences a trauma and will then later go on to have issues in romantic relationships, they can be quite chaotic. In my instance, they have been, um, and can be on and off, very similar to how I was talking about my dad, quite an ambivalent character and traits. And most people's perception will be that, oh gosh, she loves the drama, or she just can't stay with somebody, or she's onto something good finally, and she's running away from it. And
yeah.
I hate that, because I always think, gosh, the only thing somebody wants who has experienced such a chaotic childhood and life is to be at peace. But the irony of that is you can't always find it in your mind. You can't find it even when it's right in front of you. And it's such a conflict, and it's so hard to come to terms with, that actually you can step into a relationship where things are actually just a straight path, and there are really great people, and there are you don't have to face challenges that perhaps you have done. So, and I think this is what makes me emotional about that, because I've so experienced that, and it has been hugely impactful for me in order to look to get the love from a man's, the validation point, because I didn't have that, so it was really missing for such a long time. And it's been really difficult, and those things I'm still learning how to reconstruct and be better, and I think I'm still on that path, absolutely.
And thank you for sharing so vulnerably, because you use the word there is compassion. It's
Mm,
having that self-compassion, because it's a healing journey. What you're
yeah.
sharing there is a healing journey. And
Hmm.
many people can think that healing has a destination. In actual
Yeah.
fact, it's a journey.
Yeah.
And we will get activated, we will get triggered, but it's
Hmm.
about navigating that and
Hmm.
also identifying, because what you have shared there is that you've identified a behavior. You've
Yeah.
identified it, a need, a want, a desire to feel
Yeah.
validated, and you're looking for that external validation
Hmm.
from somebody.
Yeah.
And if we can take a moment to go within and
Hmm.
actually get that validation for ourselves from
Hmm.
ourselves,
Hmm.
then validation from somebody else is like the cherry on top of a cake, really. It's like
Yeah.
a bonus, isn't
Yeah.
it? Um, we don't necessarily need somebody to complete us. We are already whole,
Hmm.
but somebody can complement us and
Hmm.
all of our. And so I'm so encouraged, and I think people listening to this will feel so encouraged that you appreciate that
Yeah.
this is a journey for you,
Yeah.
but you've identified something and you are healing from that as well.
Yeah.
So it's going to connect with people so much when you say that, trying to fix people as
Yeah.
well.
Mm.
Because when we think, okay, didn't have the opportunity to fix the situation, it can make us move into the I must try my best to fix this and
Yeah.
to fix this. And it's actually known when, in actual fact, it doesn't need fixing.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
sometimes it just does not need fixing. We look for something to fix, and sometimes
Yeah.
there isn't anything to
Hmm.
fix at all. But that self-exploration is so encouraging. So I thank
Yeah.
you so much for sharing that
Hmm.
with us. Because along this journey, then it's very likely that you, because of your connections with men and how challenging that has been, and some of the tendencies that you have acknowledged there,
Hmm.
have you had an opportunity to think about what your personal definition of love is, what
Hmm.
it is that you desire? I love for my guests to be able to share that, your own personal definition of romantic love.
Yeah, absolutely. And I start this in that I love love, and I know that's a common thing that people will say, but I just think being in love and having that received is one of the most beautiful and magical and incredible experiences that you will ever have. I think, like you just said, and it sounds cliche, but true love really does have to come within. And I've heard that message for so many years, and I've always really fought against it and thought, oh, I don't feel it. I haven't got there. How do I do it? Do you have to love yourself in order to be with somebody and be healthy? And I sit here a little bit defeated and say, actually, yes, you do. Love absolutely comes from within, and you have to be at a place where you can recognize the positive parts of you and the behaviors that you can so healthily bring to a relationship. So I think love is wonderful, and I think it's a blessing to be a part of it. And from a romantic side, what's so important is communication. Again, super cliche, but if you're in a position where you can't look to communicate clearly and openly, it's devastating. And I've been there. So communication is always going to be key for me in relationships. And again, the message of just being you, you can sit with somebody and so openly be yourself without being judged. I think, for me, that's peace. That is peace and that is love. And I would like to think and hope that even if at moments every single one of us can get to experience that.
Mm. So beautifully defined there. I love your personal definition of love, and it falls so neatly into your motto. It's safer to
Yeah.
share. No, particularly it's safer to share yourself. It's
Mhm.
safer to share with your partner to communicate well. It's safer to love yourself. It's okay
Yeah.
to love yourself. It is not in a self-conceited type way. In actual fact,
Yeah.
in order for us to have quality relationships, we have to have a quality relationship with us first,
So
in
true.
order for us to see that. So thank you so much for sharing that so openly. It's so delightful and delicious to listen to. It really was that key. So also, we're talking about your mission here. You've come
Yeah.
onto the podcast and you've shared so openly, you've spoken so powerfully about your mission, how compelled you feel to spread the awareness and raise awareness around suicide prevention. Is there
Mhm.
anything more that the listeners can do in order to support your mission? Because we can support you too. So
Yeah.
is there anything that you would like to see from us in terms of that mission too?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, because I'm at the start of this journey, I I would be so interested in understanding what would help people more. I didn't think that me talking about my experience would help anyone, but since looking to start this journey, so many people have said, "Oh my gosh, this is so great to hear. I felt the same," or you know. Have you spoken to this person? Have you connected with this person? And it's really taken me back. And I've just thought, gosh, people are so willing to look to support. And so I'm really interested in how I can help other than sharing my story. Is that enough for some people? What else could I do to look to advocate this message of it's safer to share? So the response I've received so far from the connections has been incredible and really taken me by surprise. And it's made me think, gosh, don't stop. People will get something from this. And to me, again, it's another validation for an internal me, to me being enough and me speaking and sharing my story is impacting others is all I want to do. It's just amazing to think I had such a lonely world for such a long time. So if there is one other person that I can look to provide that companionship with, or the friendliness or the familiarness with, I won't stop until I can look to create an empire with this.
Oh, so amazing that you share it in that way because it's the ripple effect.
Yeah.
That one, just drop that pebble, and then that
Yeah.
ripple effect that happens is so powerful. And I am going to drop all of your details into the show notes as well. So
Yeah.
if people want to reach out to you,
Yeah.
um, what would you say would be the best method for them to connect with you?
So I would say LinkedIn and Instagram. So I'll put my taglines, but yeah, they're probably the best communication methods.
Brilliant. Saski, it's been so wonderful having a conversation with
Hmm.
you. And as a parting tradition,
Hmm.
I love for my guests to share with the audience one key takeaway to help them along their journey of love, well-being, and relationships. And I'd love for you to leave one for our audience.
Absolutely. I think a theme throughout some of the messages that I've said today, but I think a key learning for me and what I would like to project on other people is it's okay to be you, regardless of what you've been through in your life, regardless of the challenges, the decisions that you've made. Look to try to find some peace of being you and be comfortable with that. And remember that it's always safer to share, whether you speak to a friend, a family member, a work colleague. Be comfortable in knowing that people want to listen to you and people want to help you. And it's always, always safer to share.
Yeah. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Saski. I am wishing you all of the best. I'm here as a supporter of your work. I'm wishing you all of the best on your mission. It's so powerful. It's so life-changing what you are doing. Like I shared with the audience, and everyone listening here and who follow my journey is something that is very close to my heart too, because I've been there too.
Mhm.
And to know that people are there and it's okay to speak up. It's
Yeah.
okay to be your authentic self.
Yeah.
You will connect with people who will connect right back with you.
Yeah.
So I am here. I'm supporting you all
Thank
of the way.
you.
And I'm so honored that you would use this platform in order to advocate your great work that you are doing. So I'm so excited for you. I'm excited for the journey. I'm excited for your healing, for your awareness, everything. So again, thank you so much, Saski.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And for everybody who has listened to this really profound, encouraging conversation, I want to thank you for your time, for your attention, and for your energy. And until the next episode, take great care of yourself and others too.